Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, worshippers of all ages, welcome to YouTube. My name is SeaRaptor, and today we're going to look through our fourth quarterly review as we cover the last quarter of 2020 here in World of Warships. Now, some people like to do yearly state of the game videos. Some people like to just randomly talk about server populations or whatever when it suits them or whatever conversation they're having. I've gotten in the habit over the course of 2020 of doing this once a quarter, and with the start of 2021, it's time to go back and look over the last quarter of 2020. Now, one of the things I like to do is I like to refresh everyone's memory of what actually went on in that quarter, because I find it's very video gamers have short memories, right? Like, video gamers have incredibly short memories. So before we talk about server populations and the overall health of the game and so on and so forth, I like to refresh everybody's memory, like what went on, why people might have been or might not have been playing. So let's start here talking through the fourth quarter of Warships. Starting off with Update 9.9. Technically, this was the extreme end of the third quarter, but I specifically excluded this from my third quarter video because it had just came out literally on the last day of the quarter when I was doing that video. So I said, no, we'll move that one to the last one. So what came in 9.9? Well, early release of the new U.S. battleship branch. We added early access to Kansas and Minnesota to the game. And then if you remember, we were running a dockyard event over the summer with USS Anchorage, and then that Polish campaign, that European destroyer campaign, was wrapping up about that time. So technically, all of that came to an end. There was a new season of clan battles in here. This was the first season of clan battles I can think of that I didn't really participate in. Like, I might have played 2 battles, maybe. I'm not even sure. That might be generous. I might not have played any battles this clan season. This clan battle season. If I'm honest, clan battles to me is kind of becoming just a grind, right? It's the same format. It's relatively the same map pool. The ship pool is not changing much. It's always tier 10. It's just, I don't know. It's gotten stale to me, and so I've lost a lot of interest in it. And that sounds horrible. It may sound like it's even a knock against the guys in my clan. It's not. Kraken is fabulous. They bust their asses. The guys that are interested and want to play get out there and do their thing. I'm just, clan battles. I don't know. Anyway, let's see if Wargaming can keep it fresh. But there was a new season of this towards the end of the last year. It did have the new mercenary rules in it. I mean, that was a thing, but I think I look at this as an acknowledgement that I'm not the only one struggling with clan battles right now, keeping interest in it, huh? This was a nice change. We talked about it at the time in various Scuttlebutt videos. 0 damage penetrations were finally removed from the game after all of these years. And I won't get into that, but essentially this was a huge frustration for Battleship players. It certainly was for me when I would play Battleship, and this needed to go, and I'm so glad that they finally did. We had the release of 2 very controversial ships, one more than the other, I should say. As a part of this patch, of course, you had Tier 10 American carrier Franklin Delano Roosevelt available for steel, and Paolo Emilio Tier 9 Premium Italian Destroyer available for research points. Now, Paolo is a very high risk reward ship. A lot of people are not huge fans of this thing, I suppose. I see some griping about her. I love Paolo. I think she's fun. Roosevelt is a salt machine, right? Like, that ship generates salt like you wouldn't believe. But anyway, they're in the game. I will be very curious to see how long FDR stays available. I feel like she's probably going to end up on the naughty list before long. Some balance tweaks. Hawkins got a reload. Tier 5 British cruiser HMS Hawkins got a reload improvement again. They've been consistently buffing Hawkins throughout the duration of this year, and spoiler alert for later in the video, in a couple of minutes, it's not over yet. And finally, we're starting to see buffs to Tier 8 British carrier HMS Implacable. Implacable is arguably the most toothless of the British carriers, particularly with regards to her bombs, because they just don't hit that hard, they don't do that much damage, the fire chance is pretty anemic, especially for the matchmaking she gets. This is a key thing in the argument we're talking about Implacable, right? When you go play Furious at Tier 6, those bombs can do decent enough damage to most mid-tier battleships that they're functional. But Implacable starts seeing the likes of Kremlin and Yamato and all these other ships that literally, she can't penetrate these ships. They just shatter all day long, and they barely start fires, so why bother with them? Wargaming finally starting to acknowledge the problems with that particular armament on that particular ship. And then, of course, we started to see some nerfs to the high end of the new Soviet cruiser branch, which honestly was well deserved. These ships could stealth radar right out of the gate, right off the bat, as the line released. And gosh, it turns out players don't like that unless the ship. Well, nobody really likes the stealth radar mechanic, but there's very, very few ships that can do it, and the ones that can tend to be a little more on the fragile side. Go look at Minotaur, go look at Radar Edinburgh, right? Petropavlovsk and Riga are not played well, angled properly, and so on, are not that soft, not that fragile, and the fact that they could stealth radar was not okay, and finally Wargaming agreed, and made some changes. And then the big one, I love this. Finally, after all these years, you no longer had to have multiple installs of the game to play in different regions. Now, for most players of this game, this is a minor thing. But honestly, if you're like me and you have a couple accounts on a couple of different servers, this was huge and welcome, welcome, welcome. Moving on into October, we got 9.10, which was kind of the part of the official release now of the new American Battleship branch. Kansas and Minnesota were in early access, the previous patch. Now they were available straight up in the tech tree, but the top tier 10 ship Vermont still not available in any way, shape, or form. To celebrate, they added a new collection. This was called Always Courageous, and if you could complete the collection through the various drops and whatnot, you got Tier 5 Premium American Battleship USS Oklahoma, for which I offer you my many condolences. There were some new carrier interfaces and UI improvements along the way in this patch. Wargaming sold this as, oh, these are nice things. We're going to give you a better idea of what's happening to your carrier hull while you're driving your planes around. Some people are annoyed by these. I've actually seen people go, can I turn these off? They're super irritating. But I mean, if it helps the average carrier player, I feel like we should all just run with it and be grateful. The first batch of Italian battleship line came to the server for super testing purposes. This would have been I believe the 6, the 7, the 8, and the 10. The 4, 5, and 9 would come later. And this was also represented the first test of the hybrid ships. This was Tier 8 Premium Japanese Cruiser Tone and Tier 6 Premium Japanese Battleship Issei. Ships that had both main battery guns and the opportunity to launch a single squadron of some kind of bombers. Haven't heard a lot about these lately. I was having a conversation on my stream recently about this. I feel like they've got a lot of balancing issues to overcome with these ships. I love the concept. I feel like there's a lot of interesting design space here, but the balance problems they're really going to struggle with. Speaking of balance, but further tweaks here as the year went on. Hey, look, it's a reload buff to Hawkins again. That ship needs all the love it can get. It's not a bad ship, but that reload is pretty painful. More buffs to implacable bombs. Again, acknowledgement that the matchmaking she gets, her bombs were inadequate. And actually, this was interesting, a small buff to Lynn's reload speed. It's only about a half second. I think she went from 13.5 to 13. But that was noteworthy. I think that was interesting. Apparently, Lynn not doing quite enough damage that they wanted. And I also point out, this is now late October, which means this buff would have probably been announced about 3 to 4 weeks in advance of this point. That allowed them to gather, about 6 months worth of data to decide, okay, this ship needs some tweaking. And that seems pretty consistent for wargaming, right? When a new ship enters the game, players will, Zomig, this ship is crazy, or this ship is weak, or this ship is strong. Usually they wait about 6-ish months to start making tweaks to the ship. We saw them start a little early on the Petro and Riga nerfs, and I think that was warranted. But here we start seeing them go the other way with Tallinn. And then all of those new Russian cruisers were nerfed. Had detection nerfs. Now, Riga and Petro, this is now the second patch in a row this happened. Thank goodness, this needed to happen. But with Tallinn also got a small detection nerf in this patch as well. Now, in November, there were no patches whatsoever at all. 9.10 came at the very end of October. 9.11 here coming in the very, very beginning of December. We released finally the last ship in that American battleship split. They really milked this, right? For like 3 patches, they milked this battleship split. And I'm still not sold on these ships at all. But all right, the last ship in the line finally came to the game. December had some really cool stuff in it, one of which was the Advent calendar. And this was not something that was in the game client. You had to go to the website, and there was a little website. You had about a week to go and collect your Advent box for a given day. You would get a little reward, 3 flags, 3 camos or whatever. And over the course of opening them all up, you could earn some bigger rewards up to and including at least 1 nice Santa crate when the time comes. I really thought this was a great addition. I love seeing this. And then, of course, the seasonal free daily bundles in the Armory. That's a new thing as well. They did them for this patch for Christmas, and then in the next patch you'll see them come. They stay, and they were done for New Year's. So I think that was really cool. There's a lot of fair criticism that you can make about wargaming, but they honestly, when it comes to like free giveaways, free camos, these little incentives to get you to log in every day, they're fairly generous. They do a decent job with this. This was also another change that actually kind of went under my radar. I somehow missed this. I didn't notice this until I was doing this video. For years, the daily XP bonus, that 50% first win bonus, is what we used to call it, was only available if you won the game in that ship. But now, you no longer have to earn the win. As long as you earn a decent amount of base XP, you see there 300 base XP, you're going to get that daily XP bonus. The same thing goes for awarding research points. Research points used to be awarded when you sold the ship back as you played through it. That very first win you got having repurchased the ship, you got your research points. Now you only have to earn a certain number of base XP. I missed this change. I really like this. I like this a lot. I will say the daily XP bonus feels bad, right? Because when you're grinding a ship, and sometimes that first game is not so good, it feels bad. Maybe you did well enough to kind of quote unquote waste your XP bonus on a suboptimal game. So that feels a little bad. But the research point thing is definitely a big change, a big buff. I like this. So if you're spending time regrinding lines, you spend a little less doing it. There were a couple new sessions of Clan Brawls in this month. I feel like Wargaming still continues to not understand that December is they should not be running this kind of stuff in December. They did it, and it's not just in game either, guys. Right? Last year there was an Anchors Away event aboard USS Lexington 10 days before in Corpus Christi, 10 days before Christmas. Like, guys, December is the worst time to try and get people to travel to your event. Stop. No, people have other priorities in December in the West, right? I get that the Russian holidays are on a different schedule, but in North America, let us manage that ourselves, please. Now there were a lot of changes to the Armory shop and so on and so forth in this patch, right? They added Z44 for coal and Plymouth for steel. Flint and Nustarashimi had been removed from the steel shop earlier this year or late last year. They were now returned for coal. And then 3 more ships. You see there, Tier 7 Premium British Battleship Duke of York, Tier 5 Premium American Destroyer USS Hill, and Tier 7 Premium Russian Cruiser Lazo were all added back into the coal shop. None of those is really noteworthy, but I mean, maybe there was somebody out there that wanted the ship, had the coal, I like that Wargaming gives players options, right? They're going to let them do whatever they want to do. The remaining Italian battleships, which would have been the 4, 5, and the 9, were added back into the client added to the client for super testing in this patch. So that process continuing in the background. Some interesting balance tweaks here. For years, ever since they changed how AP penetration damage worked against destroyers, there were 2 exceptions to the rule. Tier 10 Russian destroyer Khabarovsk, and Tier 10 Japanese destroyer Harugumo. Both of those ships still continued to take full AP penetration damage from battleship AP, and I guess technically from cruiser AP as well. That was gone. That's now gone. You can now only overpen those with battleship AP, which is a noteworthy change. Kansas got a buff to its Sigma, which it desperately needs. Playing that ship, it legitimately can't hit anything. I hate playing Kansas. And then a nerf to Kitakaze. This is something that those of us who have watched the Tier 9 destroyer bracket with interest for years were finally fascinated to see. Tier 9 Japanese battleship Kitakaze finally got a nerf. These guys have been nerfing Jutland for the first half of this year. They nerfed Jutland like 3 or 4 patches in a row, and Kitakaze's over in the corner going, "Don't notice me. Don't notice me." Well, Kitakaze finally got noticed. Didn't change her main battery firepower, but she is a little more detectable than she used to be, and I feel like that's a fair trade-off. Harugumo was already a little more detectable than the average and most stealthy-ish, Tier 10 Japanese destroyers. It's only fitting that Kitakaze kind of finds itself in the same category. And then this was news when it happened, was that the commander skills system that revamped everything was announced earlier this year, was supposed to come out on 9/11. It did not. It was delayed, and we're still waiting on that. I believe the intent is to roll it out in 10.0 here coming soon. And then Very short cycle on this patch, only 19 days. Typical patch cycles these days, 28 days, but Wargaming shorted this one. 9/11 was a very short patch, only being on the server for 19 days, and then the week of Christmas, we got 9/12. This brought the return of the Snowflake events that we're all familiar with by now. There was the new Dockyard event added for Tier 9 Premium Japanese Battleship Heisen, currently still running. They added the 2 seasonal campaigns. This one, the first one being In Pursuit of Strasbourg, for as you play through that campaign, the carrot at the end being you're able to earn Tier 7 Premium French Battleship Strasbourg. And then there was another campaign that goes along with that, Ships and Fates, that requires a Strasbourg to kind of really get going and progress. We started testing this new ranked battle system that is actually going on right now as I record this video. Mixed opinions about this one. I might do a separate video about this. We'll see. The Gold League is still running this week. So far, I enjoyed my time in Bronze and Silver. My time in Gold has been less enjoyable, but that's not really shocking to me. We'll talk more about that later. I'm including it in this update. It was technically announced a little before this, but they're starting to, some of these really, really popular premium Tier 9 and 10 ships are going to start finding their way out of the store. The Armory, right? Georgia, Alaska, Thunder, Massachusetts, Smallland, all going away soon-ish in the new year. Summers will be right behind them. Summers is actually getting replaced by a new Tier 10 Premium American Light Cruiser that hasn't even come to super testing yet. I assume it's coming to super testing in 10.0, so they've got time to get it right. Kansas, hey, look at that. More balance tweaks. Kansas gets another Sigma buff. This is a ship that released with a 1.5 Sigma. It's now up to 1.7. I mean, this is the complaint I had about the ship when I started playing it way back in early release, right? You're going to give me a ship with 12 guns, and you're gonna gimp the reload so that it's garbage, but then you're going to gimp the accuracy so the guns still can't hit anything. So why am I tolerating this trash reload when I still can't hit what I shoot at when I pull the trigger? Wargaming finally at least starting to recognize that is a thing, and the Sigma buffs continue. Minnesota got a small shell penetration buff there at Tier 9. St. Talin actually got a noteworthy one. This was about a 12% buff to her AP shell penetration there at Tier 8. Admiral Hipper, my girl, get another reload buff like that. Hey, look, it's more buffs to Implacable bombs. Continued acknowledgement that Implacable, her bombs continue to be lackluster in the matchmaking bracket that she's in. And then Audacious, for the first time, we see Audacious getting touched, really. I don't think she's really had many changes since her release, but her bombs also getting a buff. There's so many problems. There's somebody out there that knows more about carrier mechanics than I do. But when I play Audacious and Implacable, I don't have this problem at Furious, and I won't touch whatever the 4 is. I don't remember what it is, but it's no. But when I play Implacable and Audacious, these bombs legitimately feel toothless. So yeah, like, please bring the buffs, right? On the other end of the scale, a wide swath of nerfs to carriers. This was warranted, right? Of course, Hosho and Langley's torpedo bombers getting slapped with the nerf bat where they should have been a long time ago. Playing against these things is no fun. Richthofen's AP bomb reticle got a small nerf there, and Audacious's attack aircraft also getting a nerf, and warranted. The rocket planes on Audacious were about the only thing really that kind of made that ship intriguing to play a lot of the time. So now let's look at server populations. This is something that we do every quarter just to kind of keep an eye on things. Oh, I missed this one. It was end of official Mac OS support at the very, very end of 2020. So if you're a Mac player, get that Windows emulator cooking. All right, so here's what we like to talk about, right? We like to talk about the health of the NA server. Earlier this year, a typical population trend here in World of Warships is the first and fourth quarters tend to be fairly well populated. Usually that's wintertime. More people are indoors. Weather's crappy. They run great events like the New Year and Christmas celebrations. So people are more incentivized to play in the cooler months. And then second, third quarter, summer months tend to be a little lower on the population side. People are out. People are traveling. Weather's nice. They've got sports and other outdoor events going on. Whatever the case may be. 2020 so far, you see here, we really bucked that trend, right? Fourth quarter was pretty solid. Fourth quarter 19, first quarter 20, very good. And then as we've talked about last couple of videos, the second and third quarter numbers, basically because of pandemia land and lockdowns, have basically had record server population. Where are we at in fourth quarter? Well, we're kind of reverting back to normal. This isn't shocking. This one actually, you can see here, we're looking at about 9,000 average on a concurrent daily users. That's a little ahead of where we were fourth quarter last year, after basically what amounted to a record low server involvement year in 2018, the year of the carrier. Cough, cough. Things were already kind of turning around by the back end of last year. 2020 been a really good year for server population, and you see here fourth quarter falling off as expected, right? Like we talked about it last video. These numbers were unsustainable in my opinion, and so here we are, kind of reverting back to the mean, let's say. And yeah, but North America is still a pretty healthy server. You see kind of some similar things here on EU. Very high abnormally high, I should say, second and third quarter numbers. Fourth quarter number, kind of back where you would expect it to be, right? That this was, last winter, 13,500, fourth quarter. Here we are, 14 and change. That's a small increase. That's a notable increase. And you can see here the trend line on EU remains positive. But I mean, not surprising that it's more or less neutral between third quarter and fourth quarter as people start to tire of being told to stay indoors, and things start to slowly creep back towards normality. Now, we've talked at length in previous videos about RU. I won't belabor the point. RU still kind of on its downward slope here, shedding players. The weakest, I'll say the weak. That's not the truth. It's not the weakest server, but they've definitely struggled to keep interest high in RU. 2020, a little notable simply because, again, with the lockdowns and everything, RU had a much better second quarter than the previous year, much better, a comparable third quarter to the previous year, and then here we are, we see we're actually quite a bit down from fourth quarter over the previous year. To me, I want to spend a little time talking about Asia, right? Now, this to me is really, really interesting. We talked about this last year. If you go back to one of the first videos I did, was the first one of these I did was first quarter 2020, and we talked about this massive spike in Asia participation, right? Presumably, again, due to lockdowns, restrictions, whatever, what have you. Asia was able to maintain that really strong server, concurrent server population, averagely, that's what these graphs are built on, through the year. But here we are back in fourth quarter. This is huge fall off, kind of again regressing back to about where we were fourth quarter last year. That's noteworthy to me. This is a huge drop. Like from a percentage perspective, this is a massive drop. So I'm curious if this inflation is completely driven by people being, told to stay at home orders and whatnot, or if it was this bots, right? Was this genuine interest in the game in Asia that is now kind of flagging now that people are able to maybe travel a little bit, or maybe kind of I don't know. I can't explain this, but I find it curious to see, Asia was having a really strong year and things just kind of it's like having the rug pulled out from under you. It's a little surprising. This chart was the original one that I built way back in the day. Just gives us a chance to kind of look at all the servers concurrently. You see everything on the same graph. Nice, steady, positive trend lines for as has been for a while for EU, North America, and Asia. Asia really buoyed by this spike in early 2020. I'm going to be curious as we head into 2021 to see if this number regresses back to the doldrums of 2017, 2018 in terms of server population, or if they can maintain this, if they can maintain some of this interest, this momentum they built in 2020. But the other servers, fairly healthy, seem to be going well. Of course, Russia kind of dragging down the average here, and you'll see that here in this next slide. This is our global server numbers, right? Average. If you take all those, if you take these numbers here and you add them so that you just get one graph line, it looks like this, right? And yeah, again, a very, very populous 2020. And as we get towards the end of the year, we're starting to kind of regress back to where you would expect things to be. The overall trend line, a little negative, and again, as we've been talking about through the series of videos all year, this is basically because the RU server kind of drags down the average, right? The RU server is such an outlier, this green line here. Everybody else is kind of, slight upward slope. RU is like decidedly downward slope. It kind of drags the whole average down. So what I like to do is, most players who watch my videos are probably EU and NA based. I like to say, all right, well, if you take RU out of the equation, what does the overall health of the game look like? And the answer is this right here. This is what the population numbers look like if you take RU out, which is struggling with server pop kind of historically over the last few years. Everybody else looking pretty solid. Again, you go back and you look at 2018 as kind of not such a great year, right? But then late 2018, the carrier mess in the first few months of 2019, all of that was definitely impacted. And then as carriers got off the ground, back end of 2019 on into pandemia land here in 2020, are these numbers inflated? I don't know. I don't know. I say yes, right? I think the lockdowns and stay-at-home orders have definitely driven more people to video games. These numbers are definitely inflated, but are they massively inflated? That's the question I keep wondering, right? You see here where almost you look back at 2018. I think you look at the 2019 numbers. This is definitely the impact of all the change, the carrier changes, all the stuff that it was in flux. So are we get as we start to emerge from Department of Pandemia department, are we going to see a reversion back to these numbers, or are things going to remain steady? We won't know. We won't know for a while, guys. But there you go. That's kind of a look at the overall health of the game's population. Things look pretty well if you play basically anywhere on a non-RU. Although those Asian numbers, again, are a little worrying. We need to keep an eye on that and see where that goes as we head into 2021. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed that. Wash your hands, be safe, and I'll catch you next time.